Great, welcome back. Now that we have we have a clear idea of who we are going after, we started to build those funnels. We have the processes to convert them. The next step is to fill the funnels and get people through them. So let's talk a bit about lead generation, list building, and prospecting. Then the main differences here is lead generation is mostly in and around more of the inbound process. List building and prospecting is more outbound. So I want to kind of touch on a little bit of both, just to give you some ideas to make sure that you're comprehensive. So like we say, we're starting to fill that funnel now. So on generating leads, some ideas is, first of all, you're going out there and you're just starting to think, who has this problem? You're not jumping ahead to trying to qualify a customer. You're just deciding who might benefit from it, who has this customer. Defer judgment, right? Build a list of these potential customers. You don't have to worry about qualifying them yet. Be as broad, be as creative as possible to find all of the different channels that can help you get in front of those customers. Where do they hang out? So what I mean by where do they hang out is, let's say if you're going after millennials in the US, maybe let's say, Twitter might be a good platform because a lot of them are on Twitter. Do they go to certain events depending on your profile? Are they active in certain forums or communities? If you're going after a gamer community, maybe you're on Discord. If you're after someone who's tech savvy, maybe you may be on Product Hunt. If you're going after someone who is more, let's say, in a restaurant business, maybe it's going to be in person because they attract. Let's say they are on certain board of trades or they attend certain events and trade shows. So where do they typically spend their time, both online and offline? How do they currently look for solutions? So do they generally go on Google to search for an answer to their problem? Or do they seek out other peers? Do they ask for recommendations on certain platforms? Do they have certain training programs and partnerships? If so, then this will help you start to think about, again, who can you partner up with? What channels are best for you? And start there. Because yes, you could go for every channel, but not every channel is going to be the most effective for you. Make sense? Look at what competitors are doing. If you've done your mystery shopping, you would have known how do your competitors find their prospects? How do they find these customers that you're going after? Are they doing certain activities? Are they attending trade shows? Are they going to certain events? Are they advertising in certain places? What kind of referral campaigns do they have? So start with that as well. And yeah, think about who could be potential referral partners as well. So for example, if you're a solution provider that sells, let's say, a logistics solution to supply chain companies. And if you know that, let's say, there are certain aggregate vendors or advisory committees for supply chain companies, then maybe start there because maybe they could be good potential partners. So for example, let's say the Trade Commission or Export Development Canada, if you're in Canada. So who are partners that could give you either good credibility or help you open doors to get in front of more customers as well. But yeah, like I say, don't worry if these prospects will buy or not yet, because as you're generating leads, as you're getting in front of them, you're doing twofold. So one is you're going to be establishing yourself as a thought leader in the space so that they will start to become aware of you and you can nurture them over time. And then once they're qualified, then you can go after them and convert them in the sales process. So some just ideas just to give you different channels if you haven't already considered some of them. So conferences, trade shows, those are some good places. Are there ones that are specific to your industry or your product or your service or solution? Content marketing, creating thought leadership pieces, be it, let's say, starting a podcast, blogging, creating tutorials, guides, those kind of things. Workshops, webinars, newsletters, blogs. Yeah, I've talked about a lot of those. Using some case studies, highlighting the success of your clients, making them the hero as opposed to you trying to highlight yourself as the hero, right? That also helps not only build a community, but it also builds credibility because you stand behind them and it shows and you show how you help them achieve the results that they were looking for, right? LinkedIn is another good way. So, are there places where you can scrape data in terms of finding a profile of what your target customer looks like? Maybe it's companies at this size in this industry. You're going after certain decision makers. So are there like lists that you can use, like LinkedIn or other? And yeah, just start to think about how you can get in front of some of these people. If you have existing clients, obviously ask them to give you referrals. Ask them if you could feature them in one of your case studies. And yeah, most of them will be happy to do it. And usually when you share about your case study, they will also be happy to share in their network as well. Other things you can also do is comparing other organizations that are similar to the ones that you're going after. Maybe it's an opportunity for you to expand your target market, right? So if you're in the B2B specific realm, lead generation may be a bit different. So here are some B2B specific examples. Number one, as you consider B2B, in most cases, B2B is still human to human, right? You're still engaging with a person, and people make decisions, not companies. So you need to understand what is the approval and implementation process. Who needs to be in the room? Who needs to be around the table? How do they typically implement or approve these kind of things? Do they want to do a trial? Do they want to test it out? What's the period? Do they do it after their budget cycle, before the budget cycle? Do they have certain let's say seasonalities around their business? What are their considerations when adopting something new? Are they worried about, let's say, a risk of integration with other existing tools that they have? Are they worried about, let's say, security? Are they worried about, let's say, the payment and budgeting? So you want to take all of that into consideration as you start to think about who you're reaching out to, because that will really affect both the kind of person you target in your outreach, but also when you decide to reach out to them as well. The different stakeholders, if you're not already familiar with them, generally this is kind of what the rough buckets look like. So you have users. These are people who are the ones who are using your product or services directly. They may or may not be the same as the rest. Sometimes they could be, sometimes they're not. Advocates are people who really want or see some benefit from using your product or service. And that the user could be the advocate, but it could also be different as well. So I'll show you an example in a second. Decision makers are who is the one who can actually sign on the dotted line and approve it. And sometimes you also have buyers as well. So buyers are slightly different from the decision maker in the sense that they are the ones who actually write the checks. So be aware of all of them. So an example here is, let's say if you have a CRM tool, you're selling some sort of software that helps with sales tracking. A user would be the sales reps who are using it, because obviously it's going to allow them to have better relationship with their customers. But the advocate or the influencer may be the sales manager, right? Maybe that's because it helps them better track their team's performance and hold their reps accountable. Obviously, you need to get everyone to see the benefit, but different people will care about different things. So just be mindful of that. The decision maker, or let's say the gatekeepers or even blockers, could be, let's say, the tech department. Maybe they needed to integrate with their tech stack. Maybe it's the financial department for their budget. And then the customer or decision maker might be the CEO or the head of sales. So they may all be different. They may all be the same as well. So just be mindful of that. Some other examples that I can kind of pull from some real life examples that I've worked with. There's this entrepreneur who we worked with in one of our immigration entrepreneurship programs when I was back in the accelerator. She came from Switzerland, and basically she had a lot of experience running a chocolate business, but she wanted to open a business here in Vancouver as well. The business was doing very well in Switzerland, and she was at least she was humble enough to realize that despite everyone loving chocolate, maybe there's a different need in a local market here in Canada. So she went out, she did some customer discovery, and she found that a lot of Vancouverites care about things like being vegan, being gluten-free, and it told her that there is that demand for this type of chocolate, but it's not fulfilled. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of like vegan-friendly chocolate, but it tends to be dark chocolate. But a lot of people like milk chocolate; they want a sweeter taste, right? But there's no vegan-friendly milk chocolate. So because of that, then she identified like a unique market to go after. So okay, there her target customer or the user is the general consumer. But there again, like depending on the model that she's pursuing, maybe she's not going direct to consumer. If she wants to go into retail or distribution, then the picture is a little bit different, right? Well, let's say if you do distribution, your decision makers are distributors. They care about, let's say, the transportation of the product. They care about shipping and logistics. So they care about, like, does it have a good storage or shelf life? It helped her understand who are some potential retail buyers that she could go after. And then the actual buyer itself would be the retail stores, right? Sure, they also care about shelf life, but maybe they also care a bit more about the visual aspect of it, the packaging, right? Will this sell well? So they want to see that it's had a proven track record of sales. They want to see, and they're thinking about product placement, the shelf, how it's going to be displayed, the visual aspect of things. She also learned a lot about the ordering preferences for retailers. So depending on who your stakeholders are, they'll care about different things. So you want to learn what they care about. Another interesting example here is there's this company in my group called Life Booster, and they create this safety vest for mining workers. And what it does is the safety vest will detect posture and injury, and it will communicate it to a mobile device. And at first, when they approach their target user, which would be the miners directly, then they found that, oh, you know what, the miners, they think it's an interesting device. They think it will help them be more safe in the workplace, but they don't have that kind of decision-making ability. So then this is, okay, who should we be speaking to? And they found out that, okay, we should be speaking to the union. And then obviously the union say, oh, okay, if the workers don't see value in it, then we can't implement it. But then not only that, there's another level as well, which is the company itself, right? So you have the workers, the union, and then the company. So depending on who they're speaking to, they're learning about many different things, right? The workers gave them a lot of good feedback around design, usability, the comfort of the device. Like you can't have it communicate with your mobile device because mobile devices aren't allowed on a work site because it could be distracting and dangerous. Union gave them insights around the approval process and implementation. Interviewing the companies helped them understand who the decision makers are, and kind of the timing of purchases for products and services like this. So you may value going out and doing some level of discovery with each type of stakeholder. And in the same, if you're actually doing prospecting, if you're trying to get in front of them and sell them, you may have to speak to not only one, but multiple groups, all concurrently, not one after the other, right? Another example, just to give you even more to think about, is let's say this one actually came from a hackathon that I participated in. And the idea was ad car. Basically, they say, hey, why don't we run ads in like taxis and Ubers? And what a general ride hailer can enjoy is they don't have to pay for the ride, but in exchange, the ride is free if they choose to view ads on their journey instead. And the business model is through advertisement revenue. They need to still go out and validate a few different levels in terms of the stakeholders, right? So you have the general rider who's in the car. Are they willing to watch ads for the entire ride? Or will they actually watch it, right? The taxi drivers, would they be willing to install these displays? There's going to be cost. What's in it for them? What do they care about? Taxi companies, would it help them make more money or less money than their current model? Marketing agencies, would they pay for this? Do they believe that the consumer who's in the taxi will actually watch the ad, or maybe just close a blind eye, ignore the ads? How much would they pay the taxi companies for this? They need to kind of understand all of that. So in some case, just try to understand who are all the stakeholders that speak into your solution and try to understand what they care about. So we talked a bit about disqualifying customers when we did the exercise in and around the customer persona. But the quick reminder here is be comfortable saying no. Because at the end of the day, every yes that you say, that you commit to, is effectively also a no to something else. Because maybe you'll have less capacity to work on, a better project. So if you are not being mindful about some of the pieces that I mentioned earlier, like let's say, for example, pricing, if you're pricing too low, you'll end up in a situation where you are desperately working with every single client that comes across your table because you need that revenue to survive, right? So a lot of things, not only sales related, but more systemically, you need to make sure that they're set up properly in your business before you can start to kind of put the pedal to the metal and focus on sales. So remember as well that if you are finding that customers are only focused on pricing and purely going after the cheapest option, they may also not be ideal target customers. If they're only looking for the cheapest vendor, then if you work with them and if they find another cheaper vendor out there, they're definitely going to switch. So they're not loyal. They don't care about anything else. They don't care about quality. They just care purely about the price. So maybe they're not a good fit. So on the B2B side of things, I'll touch a bit about how you reach them, and then I'll show you the method for building that list. So ideally, the best way to generally get into an organization for B2B is to start top down. So top down means you want to go in from the decision makers. So maybe the CEO, executive level, because if there is interest from the top, generally the bottom will follow. That doesn't mean that this is a hard and fast rule again. There may be other ways where you can, if you get a bunch of users, the bottom interested, then once they're already in and hooked onto it, it might be easier for you to convert, let's say, middle decision makers or even executive level as well. Generally, if you're doing top down, then your ask should be something along these lines, right? Because usually they don't really care to test and experiment with new solutions. So you may ask them to refer you to someone else who's the best person to talk about on this topic. What your email might look like or your call might look like is, hey, provide some context. You introduce yourself and you say, hey, I wanted to reach out to the best person to speak to regarding this topic. So simple and short. And obviously, if you get referred, then you want to include that person under the CC, right? If it's an email, because they are much more likely to take a meeting if there's pressure coming from the above, and they know that their let's say superior is interested in actually exploring this. So here's a tool you can use, especially if you're in the early days. This will help you just better identify the right path to take for the type of customer you're going after, especially in the B2B space. So if you're B2C, you can skip over this. What it looks like is generally you'll have different ways of reaching out to the customer. For example, if you have a funnel here, there's an email or call, a second follow-up, maybe there's a sales call where you do a direct pitch, and there's a demo, there's a proposal, and then maybe there's a contract. Then maybe you have different stakeholders, the user, the advocate, there's a technical approval, a budget approval, and then the decision maker itself. So what you want to do is, if you're reaching out to one organization, you can actually try reaching out to multiple stakeholders at the same time. Don't just reach out to one person at a company, because if that one person doesn't reply to you, it doesn't mean that the entire company is not interested, right? So maybe they missed your email. Maybe they are busy with their own projects. Who knows? So try reaching out to multiple people at the same company. And then you want to track, right? Did the person respond to you? How long did it take for them to respond to you? Are there specific comments? Maybe no reply, or maybe they say, oh, you need to speak to this person first. And then you track that moving forward in terms of all your interactions. This is the starting point, will help you understand who needs to be involved where and when. So moving forward, once you start to have more data, then you'll understand, okay, generally in the first interaction, it's best for me to reach out to someone who is, let's say, management level. In, let's say, the sales call, I need to get the CEO involved, I need to get marketing involved, and I need to get the advocate, i.e. the sales manager, involved. In the demo, I need to get the sales rep or the user, and I need to get the manager involved. And then in the proposal, I need to get the all of the approvers, and the decision makers involved. So you just need to know that who needs to be involved at each stage, so you don't miss them out, or else it's going to just slow down your sales process as well. So a lot of everything I've covered so far, this kind of gives you some idea around like how to reach the right people. Let's go into building the list itself. So I'm going to show you a very specific process. This is by no means the only process, but this is what I use myself when I'm usually doing my own prospecting. So this is what the workflow looks like. First, I start by identifying some prospective companies. From there, I start to find where I can build a list of these companies. So either through industry associations, government listings, or maybe through LinkedIn. I then try to identify decision makers at each of those companies. How do you do that? Either through LinkedIn or the company's About Us page if it's a small company. And then I try to guess their emails. I'll show you how to get that in a second. There's a tool called hunter.io, and then you automate the process, because ideally sales reps, they shouldn't be spending their time doing list building, because list building is very time intensive, but it's also very, not to say low intelligence, but it's very repetitive. So you want your sales reps to be focusing more on relationship building and kind of the more intelligent conversations around helping the customer transition through the funnel, right? So you can automate a lot of this process through outsourcing with a platform like Upwork or freelancer.com, whatnot. And then once you automate the list building process, you want to make sure you clean your list as well. Make sure you're not reaching out to people who have left the organization, typos, bad emails, those kind of things. So there are tools, and I'll show you one of the tools that I use. And then once you have all of that done, you can start to craft your outreach script, be it an email or call. And then you can start to send those messages or call them. And if you're sending through an email, there's this thing called a mail merge, and I'll get to that. So list building, there are a lot of different tools out there to do it. This is one tool. This one is called Growth Genius. And you can see like what it will allow you to do is it has a database of companies that are on LinkedIn. And you can filter based on, let's say, title, location, company, number of employees, industry, blah, 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 what have you. You can also try doing something like this. Like when I was trying to look for companies that were social ventures, because we ran a program when I was at the incubator that would train social ventures on how to raise capital from social investors. What I did is I basically just searched bcorp.csv on Google. And you'll be surprised. There are a lot of unprotected files out there that you can easily get access to. So you pull a list. There are maybe existing databases. Obviously, you have to be careful because some of these databases may be outdated. Industry associations, government websites. Specifically Canada, I'll see if I can give you an example in a live demo right now. Directory of Canadian companies. So you can see I've basically gone to the Canadian business registries, BC for my province, restaurants, and here you have lists, right? So that's where you start building your list. So many different ways to do it. Once you have your list, once you have some companies, the next step is to figure out who you could reach out potentially in that company. So you can do this by searching the company on LinkedIn. So I'm going to try this one here. Well, I'm going to just try searching them to see if they have a website. Looks like there isn't a website I can find directly, but I think they have a LinkedIn profile. Let's see. So if they're a smaller company or a medium-sized company, most of them will have a team page or an About Us page. And that's usually a good place to start because usually you can find either the owner, the principal, the founder, what have you. The other option is if you look them up on LinkedIn, you can also see their employees, like over here, which you will see in a second. See all 15 employees on LinkedIn. Right? So you can try to look for potential decision makers here as well. And yeah, that's another example here. Once you know who you're reaching out to and you know their company and or their website, it's usually not too difficult to get their email. So a tool here is hunter.io. And what you do is basically you put in the company's website and it will actually tell you the person's emails. You may need a premium account in order to get the exact emails. But even if you don't have a premium account, I'll quickly show you. They actually give you enough information to guess the email on your own. So this is my own website, and it will probably show you my email. So you see what it does here is it shows you the common pattern. And that is my email. It's chin, CHIN, @classynovel.com. So the common format is first name @website.com. There are exceptions to the rules. There are some companies, especially the larger ones like banks, securities, they tend to have different formats depending on different stakeholders. Some of them, they don't even use names. Some of them, they get associated with, let's say, the CEO will have a CEO @companyname.com. But generally, the most common format for most company emails is generally along the lines of first name @company.com, or maybe it's first name dot last name, or maybe it's initial first name and then full last name, or maybe it's first name initial last name, or maybe it's first name underscore last name. So you could try different ways. So you guess the email. You can guess multiple if you don't have a clear answer, but don't waste too much time, right? Try to guess the ones, get the ones that seem most apparent or almost straightforward. And then you build your list. So this is an example of what a list will look like, right? You'll have the person's first name, last name, email, maybe a title, the website, the company name. Those are generally the main categories. The rest are all dependent on how you want to track your data, how you want to segment your list, and also how you do your mail merge. So if it's not important to you, then let's say if you don't care about company size, then don't bother putting it into your sheet, because any extra data point is just more work to input, right? But if you do care about it, if you care about the company size, you care about the region, you care about the industry, then put all of the information in if you want to. But now you've started to build your list. Before you automate, before you outsource this to someone, my personal recommendation is to actually test your own list manually before you automate. So run some tests to ensure, number one, is the process that you're using effective? So what I mean by is the process is generally, are you using the right list? Like, let's say if you do a search and you get a list from an industry association, is that a good list? Do people from that list convert well, right? Or if you set your search criteria to companies that are, let's say, mid-size, anywhere from 50 to 200 employees, is that a good search criteria? Because maybe that might not be the right list to optimize. If you optimize the process of list building and get a big list of unqualified leads, then you're just wasting a lot of time and effort, right? So do some tests first, and then you can start to automate. Generally, what I will do is once I've figured out at least some repeatability around building the list and the outreach and getting some results, then I go to a freelancer. And even with a freelancer, you also want to test and experiment, because there are different vendors, different freelancers that perform better versus worse, right? So you can do it in batches. So what I might do is, for example, I might hire 5 different freelancers. I'll give them all different search criteria. I'll ask them all to build lists, and I will compare their lists to each other to see, like, are they all building good quality lists? Is this list more prone to errors? Is this list having more leads that will actually respond to my messages? That kind of stuff. So make sure you're always testing these kind of things. If you are outsourcing, if you're starting to do automation, a few things to be careful about. Number one, make sure that you give them very clear instructions. Freelancers are very good for repeating things that are proven and clearly outlined. But if you don't give them clear instructions, then sometimes you can end up in situations where they log a lot of hours doing unproductive tasks. So for example, you might tell them, oh, if you can't find an email, skip the row or try another tool, or this is how you guess by default, right? So Upwork is one platform. There's another one called Fiverr. There's freelancers. It doesn't really matter what platform you use, but make sure you outline things very, very clearly with them. And you make sure that you set some expectations around ambiguity around how to navigate situations where there's some level of uncertainty as well. The next step is now you have this big list, be it a list that you built yourself or a list that you have automated. You need to clean the list. Step number one is to dedupe. Dedupe means that sometimes in some cases when you build a list, you may accidentally enter the same email on 2 rows, right? So make sure you remove any duplicate emails or duplicate names or duplicate companies. Number 2, verify your emails with the email checker. I'll show you that in a second. Make sure you check the first names, the spellings, make sure it's proper. Why? Because sometimes on, let's say LinkedIn, for example, you'll notice that some people, they have unique name settings like Sandeep Rakar, CPA, CMA. If they don't enter it in the right format, maybe this shows up as their first name and then CPA, CMA shows up as their last name, and that's not accurate. So make sure you do some cleaning of your list before you start to send those emails up. Some people have emojis in their names, so you have to be careful about that. Some people don't capitalize the first letter of their names. Some people, let's say if it's Michael, maybe you want to address them as Mike, depending on the tone of voice that you're going for in the email. And then obviously also not only their first name, but also their company name. So for example, the company name over here, obviously you might not reach out to someone and say, hey, I found Western Restaurant Franchises Incorporated on this website, right? It sounds a bit too formal, right? You might say, hey, I found Western Restaurants when I was looking for this, right? So, same here, like maybe you might say, hey, I found Chop on this listing, instead of saying like, hey, I found Chop Restaurants Limited Partnership. So make sure that you clean and tidy up and remove all these kind of additional modifiers for both name of a person and also the company name itself. So how can you do that very, very quickly? There's a tool that you can use if you use Google Sheets. It's called Power Tools. I think in Excel, there are built-in tools that you can use right away. But what this will do is you can do things like you can highlight a column, you can compare it against another column, you can remove duplicates, you can remove things like leading and trailing spaces. You can capitalize all of the first letter for a row or a column. You can remove like delimiters like LLC, incorporated. So yeah, it's quite easy for you to tidy up your list using a tool like this. And the email checker that I mentioned, the one I personally like to use the most is Bulk Email Checker. There's actually a lot of other tools out there. What it will do is if you put in the wrong email, it will actually verify it for you. And if the email doesn't exist, it will tell you failed. If it does, it will tell you pass. In some cases, depending on how the company has set up their mailbox, it might also give you the unfortunate unknown or catch-all. Those are more common with high security companies that know how to set up catch-all email addresses. What that happens is basically if you send an email to an unknown email or a wrong format email, it will go to a catch-all inbox that they have. So technically it exists, but you're not reaching the right person. So in those cases, again, no surefire way to validate those companies. You may not want to waste too much time with that, and either just give it a shot, see if it works. If it doesn't work, then maybe those are just not the right companies to focus on too much right now. Before you send an email, there's an in-between step as well. You can send a copy of your email to a tool like Mailtester, and it will let you know some things. It'll let you know if your email server is set up correctly, right? Are you authenticated? Does your body contain too much, let's say, sales or spammy words like free and too many links, those kind of things, right? So it will just verify email to make sure it's good before you really send it up. And lastly, you can do a mail merge, especially if you're personalizing emails. So if you're not familiar with a mail merge, basically what it allows you to do is you can say, hey, I found company name on this platform. Hello, first name. I was browsing on platform for impactful companies that are in this sector. And what it will do is it will pull from your spreadsheet and it will fill that out according to what the cell text is, depending on that column. So it will become like, let's say, hey, John, I was browsing on AngelList for impactful companies that are in the food and beverage space, right? So that's a quick tip in terms of what you can do. There are a lot of other tools as well. Another one that I know of is called Mail Meteor. I like the tool called Yet Another Mail Merge because that one allows me to send directly from my Google mailbox through my Google Sheet. So it comes straight from my inbox as opposed to going through a mailing client like MailChimp. And if you will watch the next video on email deliverability, you'll understand why that's important. So this is what it looks like when you send it from yet another mail merge using a spreadsheet. You basically go under tools, you select the add-on, i.e. yet another mail merge, you select the email template in your draft folder, and then you hit send. That's basically it. So this is one process that you can definitely use yourself to build this. Tools like this will usually automatically help you track things like open rates, click-through rates, responses. If you are going to send mail merges, a couple of things to be careful about. Number one, make sure that your email is not spammy. Make sure you're reaching out to the right people and making sure that you sound human. We will talk a lot about how to do that properly when we cover email outreach. But if you are sending a lot of spammy emails, people can, number one, either flag you as spam, and that will in turn negatively affect your entire domain. So both in terms of SEO, but also affect other emails that you send out to anybody, even people that you trust. Your emails are more likely to end up in the spam or promotions folder. So be careful about that. And number two, if you're sending spammy emails, you could also get flagged under anti-spam regulations. So like CASL and what's the other one? The one in Europe, I don't remember, but yeah, just be careful about that. So how can you send out an email if your concern is in and around anti-spam regulations? So number one is you need to be able to prove that, one, you either have a working relationship with the person. So that means you've gotten their email through some legitimate way. Maybe they attended an event of yours. Maybe you've met them, you've spoken to them. Or number two, their email is easy to find online. So generally, if you're able to find them through, let's say, hunter.io, I would say that kind of qualifies them because the email is actually publicly displayed somewhere on the web. That's why the scraping tool is able to get it. And obviously, if you're reaching out to them as well, these are direct outreach emails. I generally don't scrape emails, build lists, and send marketing emails to. Hopefully, these lists that you create should be to some degree qualified. You've identified them as companies that are a good fit. You're identifying the right decision maker, and then you're reaching out to them very personally, and you're not just sending them promotional material. So we'll talk about all of that when we cover email outreach.